On behalf of the faculty and the staff, I would like to welcome the esteemed guests and the students to our panel discussion this evening on digital acceleration of regional development. It is my great pleasure and honor to moderate a panel of such a high caliber and on such a fascinating topic whose importance and urgency clearly stand beyond doubt. Mr. Buckminster Fuller, or actually his friends called him Bucky Fuller, an American architect, inventor, and futurist, in 1970s put forward a simple yet profound notion of technology. Doing more and more with less and less until eventually you can do everything with nothing. This statement was meant as a possible way out of the issue of sustainability, but it seems its prophecy has arguably been fulfilled by digital technology. We are doing more and more with less and less, but the question remains that what imperatives motivate our decisions and actions, and what we would seek to achieve, even if we reach the point in our technological capacity that we could do everything with nothing. Without further ado, I now introduce our panelists. From the right, Professor John DiMarco, Director of Information Technology at the Department of Computer Science at the University of Toronto. Next, Professor Richard Anderson from the Paul G. Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington. Professor Peyman, Department of Communications and Media, University of Central Asia, Naryn campus. And Assistant Professor Ayman Aljarbouh, Department of Computer Science, University of Central Asia, Naryn campus. I think that we start from the right with Professor DiMarco. Yes. When we speak of digital technology and development, Professor DiMarco, how would you give sense to these terms within the area of your expertise?
Digital technology is a very broad term. Originally, the word digital comes from digitus, finger. It's our fingers. The reason why we talk about digital technology is because computers count. The challenge of digital technology is because it's nebulous. It's like nailing jello to the wall. It's technology that involves using computing in some ways to make life better. As a term, I find it useful only to say we're talking about computers, and then I'd like to look for more specific terms that we could focus on.
Thank you, Professor. So this is the first round, and we come back to elaborate more on the points that you're making. But Professor Richard Anderson, Professor DiMarco explained digitalization in a very simple terms. Could you elaborate on the topic from the perspective of mobile technologies and their growing role in technology, and actually in education, for instance?
Yes. So, we talk about digital as transforming our lives in many, many different ways. And that's providing all sorts of gadgets that we've used. Communication has been revolutionized. That one of the most interesting trends in the last decade is how communication and digital have become joined with the device that most of you have in your hands right now, that a mobile communication device. And from the education point of view, of course, we all use it for our communication, but it's also an incredibly exciting tool to get in front of computer science students and train students in developing new applications. And I think there's a particular relevance to mobile computing and emerging countries such as Kyrgyzstan, because there are so many applications that need to be developed with respect to the local context, that application developed in Cupertino, Washington is not going to match a set of applications in Kyrgyzstan. And there's a relatively low barrier of entry into programming mobile phones. And I think this is an incredibly powerful skill, both in pedagogical value as well as potential economic impact.
So much, Professor. And Professor Pejman, what is your perspective on the spread and implementation of technology in Central Asia?
I think I would like to go at it from probably two separate perspectives. One is the perspective of the governments, and the other one would perhaps be the private sector. I think for reasons that relate to Central Asian states having been dominated for so long by the Soviet Empire, there was a lack of investment and attention to perhaps information technology. Now, with the fall of the Berlin Wall and many of the countries gaining independence, I think that the problem partly was some of the pre-Soviet or post-Soviet even psychology remained the same, and partly the governments did not have the money or did not want to spend the money. And therefore, relatively speaking, Central Asian countries were slower in catching up with upgrading information technology infrastructure. But that contrasts with what the private sector had done, and I can explain on that later on.
Thank you so much. And Professor Aljarbouh, what would be the key factors that can help in accelerating digital development in Central Asia from your perspective as a computer scientist?
I think there are many factors that can help in accelerating digital transformation in Central Asia regions. For example, one of the most important factors is building infrastructure, technology infrastructure. Digital infrastructure, for example, ICT, information and communication technology infrastructure, plays an important role in providing development in any country. I think there is a need to build appropriate infrastructure, and this is in some sort responsibility of governments and regions. And it's not only building infrastructure, but providing integration, using this infrastructure for integrating digital technology in the daily life of people living in the regions and also in their local businesses. Now, this can also lead us to another point, which is also, I think, responsibility of governments in the regions, which is providing a favorable environment for innovative development in the regions. For example, providing flexible policies, make it easy for people to have digital technology in their daily life, in their local businesses, using creatively their policy tools to provide these favorable environments. Another factor, I think, which is in most of countries that have let's say, regions where there is not very much developed infrastructure, is to invest in talented people, providing high-level education, international standard level of education, and make integration of digital technology in the educational system, which will facilitate, actually make students learn creatively, think creatively, and also to know how to solve the problems creatively, because young people, they are the leaders. They are considered as future leaders in the digital development of any country. I will finish with a point, which is collaboration and partnership with other countries that are having successful history in doing digital transformation in their regions. For example, in France, actually, we had this problem before. We had rural regions where it was extremely difficult for people to have access to digital technology in the regions. And we had a national project in collaboration with the Commission of European Union, and we had a successful history. So I think it's important also for Central Asia regions to have this collaboration, partnership with these countries, to know how they have this successful history, because this will not only have formal collaboration with these countries, but also will save money and time.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I think a key takeaway from what you were saying is that the computing, the digitization, the digital project needs to serve a real need, an actual solid human need in the region. We're not just doing digitalization for digitalization's sake. It's a real need that's rooted in the needs of the people in the region. I think you would agree.
Thank you. Ayman, would you like to add anything? Yes?
Yes, I agree totally with you. I just want to mention that it's also, we need to build the environment for having this. It's not only infrastructure, it's also having materials that can help in having this. Without infrastructure, without favorable environment in the regions, without collaboration with other countries, without providing, for example, high-level education. Here in University of Central Asia, we have a model on the sample of having high-level educational institution here in the region. We have people, proficiency in English, and you know English is an international language, and proficiency in English will open doors for students that are studying in the regions to know what's happening abroad in other countries. So all of these are factors that can help actually in accelerating digital transformation in regions. Okay.
Thank you. I should thank you all because you talk much shorter than I expected, and I didn't need to time you. So, but we have more questions to discuss. Professor DiMarco, earlier on you gave your address on the topic of digitization in education. What would be the short-term or long-term benefits that digital technology can bring about for the people of Naryn town, for instance, when we talk about regional areas?
So we have this expression called low-hanging fruit. A low-hanging fruit is a project that gives you a quick result. So there are going to be projects here in the region that there's an immediate need, it's relatively easy to do, and those projects are going to have to be the short-term projects. Because digitization needs support from the people, and it has to be able to show that it can deliver results that are meaningful in people's lives. And so if you work only on long-term projects and not on short-term ones, what will happen is that people will lose enthusiasm for the whole process, and the long-term ones won't be accomplished. As for long-term, I think the focus needs to be on building capacity. Some of these problems are very challenging. Those challenging problems will need smart people to solve them. Those smart people will take time to learn the skills they need to solve those problems, especially in the context of the local region. So I would look first for things that you can do as you are today, the low-hanging fruit, and then in long-term build your capacity to do more things in the future.
Thank you. And by the way, so any of you actually panelists, if you have any points to add at this time, you can just, contribute to the topic. And Professor Richard Anderson, earlier on we were talking about your area of expertise, and you mentioned that you are very much interested and have done a lot of extensive research in global development. So when we talk about digitization, which is part of the broader movement of globalization, so how this technology can impact the local people's life when they come in contact with that broader community of the world, so, and in most cases quite suddenly through digital technology. How this challenge, how this problem can be tackled?
So a lot of the research work I've been doing for the last 2 decades has been looking at digital transformations around the world and how particular technologies can be deployed broadly to impact people's lives. And one thing I'm very happy about in this work is being able to do this at a university and educational setting. So involve students, involve doing research, involve different types of projects. Just to give a couple areas which I think are very, very relevant, and one that the governor mentioned was expanded connectivity, that I was very excited to hear that the goal of connecting all of the schools in the province. And I think there's incredibly interesting things that could be done at a university in taking advantage of this connectivity, understanding the applications that will be very effective in the regional schools, building on improved connectivity. Another area of research that I've had in the last 5 years is looking at digital financial services and how these technologies are leading to greater financial inclusion around the world, of how unbanked populations can be connected through mobile devices, and how appropriate techniques for technological inclusion lead to financial inclusion. And again, these are the types of things that can tie into an academic program, and how students trained here will be very, very influential in these emerging industries.
Oh, thank you. I think the point you just made also is the area that I'm actually personally, as an academic, very interested in. And I have one more question on this topic, because I think this is a very important topic that deserves a lot of attention. So development without justice brings to mind disastrous experiences. How digitalization can contribute to a more just society?
So I think one thing that's absolutely critical to that is having an educated population involved in the development, meaning having technologists also trained and appreciating humanity, the humanities, having technologists with a broader view. And so the technologists are not just acting on the orders of business, but are thinking deeply about potential consequences.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to add anything on this topic, justice and technology? If not, I have a question for you, Professor Pejman. So, when we speak of digital acceleration of regional development, what aspects of development do we have in mind, particularly in this context?
You know, in the context of the, again, Central Asian countries having gained their independence, I think one of the things that's important is governments reconnecting with their own people and using IT solutions and innovations, be that mobile technologies or others. I think it's really important. If you look at the websites, for example, of many government organizations, a simplest thing to do would be to provide real useful information that people can relate to and give feedback to, and therefore feel some level of connectivity between their representative government and their people. And the other thing is the coalition, I think, is something that I think Ayman was referring to, the coalition between the private sector and the government. The private sector has gone way ahead of governments in just about, not just in Central Asian countries, but in other countries, in using IT innovations and solutions. But I think where we have a severe gap is the sort of a cooperation or collaboration between the private sector and the government in dealing with pressing issues of the people. And I think in terms of national development, there needs to be more of a collaboration between the two sides.
Thank you. So, and in this model, just one more question on the topic. So, do you consider top-down or bottom-up model, because these are the management and these are the social development models that nowadays are, you know, part of the heated debates around the world. So, when we talk about digital acceleration, is there any role left for the local people and to play that bottom-up role in the society to push for changes in society and putting forward proposal to the government to change? How do you account for the role of the people, ordinary people?
I think in this day and age, the youth, the younger generation, can either be the catalyzers or they can be the red flags for governments. We have seen all around the world simultaneous demonstrations that have occurred. The Arab Spring came out of nowhere because of, starting with Cairo, with people using social technology. In Hong Kong these days, people learn where to go to demonstrate through IT technologies and IT sites. So I think the governments, not just in this part of the world, worldwide, even in developed countries, have to learn that the governance format has changed, and that unless they include the younger generation in a more democratic, more participatory society, that would be a danger to themselves. And I think the younger generation will rebel if they see the roads closed.
Great, thank you. And yeah, you want to add something, please?
Just give a comment here. It's okay. It's the willingness of local people to be part of the digital technology in regions, but also it's the willingness of the governments. They should encourage this. And here in Kyrgyzstan, actually, we have a model. We have EGovernment. So they started a few years ago EGovernment portal, where citizens, they can do many administrative things. So instead of doing paperwork, they can do it electronically. So this is like a collaboration between society and government, and willingness from both sides on accelerating actually the digital transformation in the society.
And thank you. And please, in the first round, you talk about a few factors, but would you like to elaborate a little bit more on the research and the role of the research in digitization?
Yes, research, well, investing in research and development is also important, actually, to have digital society. Unfortunately, so if you want to talk honestly, in Central Asia, it's not, the research is not very well established. I heard, for example, in Kyrgyzstan here, in 2011, they found that there is only 412 researchers per 1 million inhabitants, which is extremely low if you compare it with other countries. So there is a need to build new research centers, to fund research projects, to propose research projects which are related to the natural resources, because Central Asia countries, especially in the regions, they are rich of natural resources. We should provide favorite environment for research to attract also international researchers to come and do research. And for some projects, the research outcome can be related directly to what is in the regions, for example. This is a very important topic, and this also it's not only building research centers, but also infrastructure, secure, safe, and modern infrastructure that can provide favorite environment and good research environment. Yes.
Thank you. If I'm allowed to wear my philosophy, social sciences hat, I would like to ask a question. There's a comment? Yep, please, go.
To follow up on the research, At a very basic level, research is solving problems that have not been solved yet. And the entire world wants to solve problems. Everyone is worried about climate change. Everybody is worried about democratization. Everyone is worried about the future of the world in many different respects. Central Asian region needs to receive an opportunity to participate in the solving of these problems. The world is working together on solving problems. There's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of desire to participate in the world stage in shared problem solving, and absolutely Central Asia needs to be part of that picture.
Thank you. And Professor DiMarco, technology seems to be all-knowing and all-present, but not always all good. And are there any criteria in the process of research and development of technology, for instance, in your department, for thoughtful consideration of the sociocultural, environmental consequences of technology as part of the research process?
There are various processes in most major universities involving research ethics and whatnot. There's specific work at the University of Toronto in the area of the environment. So there's the Center for the Environment at the University of Toronto, and its current director is a computer scientist. And the focus there is that the environment and climate change and so forth is a kind of ethical or moral problem. And computing needs to do its part to try and address that. Now, there's a dark side to technology. I mean, technology is an amplifier. It amplifies whatever it is that the person who builds it is meaning to do with it. And as an amplifier, it amplifies good. It also amplifies not so good. There is no sure, hard and fast way to make sure that it's always going to be good. In the end, it comes down to people and their commitment to be ethical and to do good, to serve others and not themselves.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to add on this point? Probably Professor Anderson, in your department at your university, how would you address this concern about technological developments in relation to social sciences and ethical thinking?
So this is a very big challenge to address it, and in my department there are many, many discussions around this, many conflicting views on this, and I honestly don't believe that we'll ever be able to align a group of faculty members. And it's especially difficult to align faculty members on a deep and important topic such as ethics. That one, I do have to grant there's a lot of different views. I'm personally concerned about some technologies that people develop and concerned because of potentially dangerous applications, even though there will be also a set of good applications. That one thing that I just want to repeat again, that as educators, I see our real leverage is making sure that students do get a wide set of viewpoints and are given opportunities to study and debate and think deeply about ethics.
Thank you. And I have only one more question. And any of our panelists would like to contribute, I welcome. So digitization is a double-bladed sword. So it fosters and strengthens small businesses. It empowers individuals. And at the same time, can promote a consumer culture, which can be dominated by international corporates. So, which is a very well-known problem in developed countries. And is there any solution to this when we are applying digitization or digital technology in regional areas like Naryn? So how would we be able to address this issue or as part of our consideration?
Digitalization is a new domain of action, but those who are doing the acting are people. So corporations are motivated by people. They are collections of people focused on a common goal. Small businesses are people. We are all people, and we're doing various things in the world, some good, some not so good. Ultimately, we're using technology as one of the ways that we act in the world. We act in the world in other ways. We do it through our speech. We do it through our actions. Technology will amplify what's coming out from the person. And it's the person where the decision needs to be made for ethics. And it's also the person who needs to stand up and say, stop, this is wrong. So there will be use of technology by people with selfish intent for their own gain. And it will be also imperative for those who see concerns in this, who have concerns in this, to stand up and use technology to push back. How it will work out is human history. I mean, we will find out. It will be a matter of human history how it all works out. But technology will amplify the good and the bad, those who are looking out for their own interests, those who are looking out for the common good.
Thank you. And the final remarks from Professor Pejman and Aljarbouh. Would you like to add anything to wrap up?
I think too often we ignore the fact that IT is supposed to provide solution to a problem. Too often I think we provide products without considering what the problem was. And I think the hackathon that we had today is a perfect example of how to do it right. We need to find out what the social problems are and then go backward and find out what IT solutions can we generate to solve those problems. That applies to Naryn as much as it applies to any other city. And I think a lot of times in the process of pushing technology forward, we've forgotten the real reason for technology.
Thank you.
I will just give a short comment that, of course, I mean, technology for some regions, it can have, technology always have advantage, disadvantage for some domains, but it's always important to have our project, I mean, how to apply technology in a region in such a way that we minimize the disadvantages of applying the technology in this region. So it's like a project, a big project, a lot of study, collaboration also is between regions to know what is the best for the region, which technology that can fit best for the region.
Thank you so much. Let me thank our panelists for providing such great insights into the topic. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time, the audience, for carefully listening. Thank you.